Hi, hello, and welcome again everybody to another unscripted video of Natural Juan. And when I say unscripted, that means be prepared for me making a lot of mistakes. So okay, this time around we're going to discuss the CRGE or Conjectural Role-Playing Game Master Emulator by Zach Best. Artwork by Matthew Vassey. It's another Game Master emulator that you can use for your role-playing games if you don't have a Game Master, or you do have a Game Master but he's too lazy to plan things out. Also, another tip is you can also use this for your writing. It's a good writing aid. If you find yourself stuck or stumped in a certain scene, you can use this. But before we go on, I'd like to invite you all to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications if you'd like to see more content like this. Also, here's a special shout out to Jonathan Green, my patron in Patreon. Also, if you guys want to support me as well, you can find my Patreon account right in the description below. Or if you just want to make a quick donation without being a permanent or regular supporter, there's also a PayPal account there that you can use if you want to support me that way. So okay, with that out of the way, let's begin. So the CRGE is a lot like other Game Master emulators, but it offers quite a few other things. Now, like I said, you can use this to play your role-playing games, be it Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or 40K roleplay, and you can play it without a Game Master. And it's more just like them, just like the ones I've introduced already, from Mythic to Nathan Rockwood's Game Master Apprentice cards to Adventure, what was that again? Covetous Poets Adventure Generator. This emulator works a lot like if you were in a movie. It's scene by scene, and it's also, it's more episodic in nature. So it mashes well with games like the Chronicles of Darkness or World of Darkness. I've discussed a little bit about that before. Or Mutants and Masterminds. One thing I will say, okay, let's just get to the mechanics first before I go into actual criticism of it. So okay, as you can see here, this is the Loom of Fate. This is the answer oracle of this game. And for this, you use a 1d100. The 100-sided dice. It's not literally 100-sided dice. It's just two 10-sided dice with one serving as your 10s and the other serving as your 1s. Just like this one here. See? There's a 10s dice and a 1s dice. So if we roll something, see? 77. It's okay. Now, I'm just going to explain a few things to you. Let's start with the results that they're talking about. Now, you can see there's a yes and no, but there's also a but and unexpectedly. See, this is where it really shines, if you ask me. Okay, so yes and no, that's already obvious. You already know what that means. No means no, right? Okay, but when there's an and to it, that means it's a big yes or a big no. For example, like if you will ask, is someone there? And it says yes, and that could mean it's not just one person that's there, okay? And if it comes out no, and it means not only is there no one there, it is very likely that no one will be there. As in, it's deserted, you're in the middle of a desert or something like that. Okay, that makes sense? Okay, now, there's the but. Yes, but this means it's not a very strong yes or no. Yes, but, again, let's go back. Okay, another idea is, for example, your character is inside a car. He tries to start the car. So, does the car start? Yes, but the car starts, but then it can mean that there's something wrong with the engine. As in, it won't run. It can mean there's something wrong with the car. So even if you do get it started, you still need to fix something. There's still a problem. The next one is no, but... Again, let's use the same example. So your character tries to start the car. No, it doesn't start, but you see another vehicle in the distance. It could be another car, or it could be a motorcycle. See? Now, when you add the and unexpectedly, this can mean one of these things. You use a D20, a D20, 20-sided dice like you use for Dungeons and Dragons to figure out what comes up. I'll be explaining this a little later, but yes, this means that it's already a big no or a big yes, and a big change happens, and each of this can mean a different kind of change. Now, let's just talk real quick about these other things here, like to knowledge, to conflict, and to endings, because these are pretty easy. When you say to knowledge, this is just the beginning of something, the beginning of a so-called thread. When you say thread, this can be a plot line, a piece of plot, and there are other threads, those are other subplots. So this is when a plot begins, or a plot thread begins. So to knowledge can mean if your character is a detective, maybe there's a phone call. That's what it means by to knowledge. Or if you're playing a superhero game, this is the part where your character learns that he has powers. Okay? To conflict, this should be obvious. This is challenge and combat. Like, this is when you run into your first enemy, or maybe your character gets into trouble for the first time, that sort of thing. To endings, this is simply the ending. This is how it turns out in the end. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about some of this other stuff. Oh yeah, and the follow-up, these are additional questions that you may ask to give more ideas, or just to solidify the idea. So example, you can say, are we in a forest? If it comes out yes, you can ask additional questions, follow-up questions, like what kind of trees are there? What kind of animals do you see? Or what kind of noises you hear? Narrative momentum, these are the kind of things that actually come with the story. For example, again, you're in the forest. Of course, a forest is going to have trees, so you don't need to ask, are there any trees? That would be really stupid if you ask me. Unless, of course, you're playing some kind of sci-fi game wherein you have giant mushrooms instead of trees, maybe something like that. But yeah, okay. Now, now here is another concept, the surge count. So whenever you get a yes, you add +2 to the next result. So this can mean that as you go on, it's more and more likely, the more yeses you get, the higher your chances of getting a yes but or a yes and unexpectedly. And when you get a no, you instead subtract 2. So the more no's you get, the less and less likely it becomes. See? Now, let's move on to another part, at least one of the more important parts. This is just a brief rundown of how this thing works. I'm not going to give you something complete, but just enough to get started if you're having trouble understanding things here. So, okay. Now, there's something here about conjured threads. We'll get to that later. But now, let's talk about the unexpected situations. So, the cross-stitch. This means that another thread gets to be the main thread for the rest of the scene. Now, an idea here. For example, your main idea is heroes trying to escape the laboratory of a villain. But there's a subplot or a minor plot thread about the heroes having a romantic subplot, maybe a love triangle. Yeah, you're going to focus on that more. Now, Entering the red, this means that the situation, like it says here, threat of danger or combat arrives. Again, with your superhero characters, they get into a more dangerous situation. Maybe the villain finally releases robots or something to go after them. So enter stage left, a new character arrives. This can mean that maybe there's an advanced robot with advanced AI that's going after them. And maybe if the heroes do something particularly special, they can get the robot to side with them. Now, the costume change, don't take all this stuff literally. They can mean a variety of things. So there's the costume change. This means that an NPC drastically changes their mind. We can go back to the robot idea. What happens to the robot is the robot decides that it would rather side with the heroes. See? Something like that. Next, foreshadowing is just a hint. Set a thread to be a main thread for the next scene. So this can be a lot of things, but it's like a hint of what's to come. Like, for example, the villain is shown not to get along well with his daughter. So what happens is, maybe in a later part of the game, the villain's daughter will also side with the heroes. See? Something like that. So maybe in a future scene, in an upcoming scene, they're gonna get a chance to get the villain's daughter to side with them. So a framing or a new or pre-existing or object becomes critical to the main thread. So yeah, again, we can use the villain's daughter. Maybe the villain's daughter has the key to escaping the facility. So if the heroes can get her to side with them, they can get out. Next is the key grip. This means that you're just going to move on to the next scene. Maybe another place, maybe not. But just a different scene altogether. Maybe a part of the facility where the heroes breaks down. Okay. Next is Limelit. The rest of the scene goes great for the PCs. This means that something good finally happens to them. Maybe they find a main key or a powerful weapon to fight the villain. The montage is the time frame of the scene changes to a montage of action set across various scenes to move forward. Maybe the heroes keep finding special weapons to fight the villain with. The pattern change is when the main thread gets modified drastically. Whatever direction the main thread was heading, make a hard left. See? So yeah, they're trying to escape the villain's facility. So instead of that, maybe they find a portal to another dimension found in the villain's facility. So yeah, so here's that. Reroll or reserved. This can be up to your game master, or you the players can decide on what this will be. See? It's up to you what to put on there. If you don't have a game master, maybe your game master already has an idea for it. Next is the set change. Like, it'll be in another location or something like that. 6 degrees. A meaningful but not always positive connection forms between two PCs or NPCs. So an example of this would be if, again, the villain's daughter I talked about, what if she suddenly develops feelings for one of the heroes, and instead of just being a love triangle, now you got 3 characters seeking the affections of one character. See how that can happen? So yeah, it's not always positive because that just introduces more conflict, right? Okay, so to endings, this gets you a chance to finally get an ending. Maybe the heroes finally find a working exit. To conflict, maybe they find more bad guys to fight. To knowledge, so this can mean the beginning of something more. Maybe they learn more about the villain and his daughter. Maybe they learn that the villain's daughter was always against her villain father or mother. Next, tying off, this means one of your threads finally end. Maybe with the romantic subplot I was talking about, maybe the heroes finally resolve that they don't really have feelings for each other and decide to move on. Yeah, that's just an example. Next, upstaged. An NPC makes a big move. This can mean that maybe the villain's daughter finally gives the heroes the key to exit the facility. See? Instantly solved. Okay guys, another thing to note here is the Vignette system. So it has 4 steps. Just pay attention. There's step 0, pick a broad context or system such as steampunk or Middle Earth. This is where you get the chance to pick either you want Lord of the Rings type of game, or maybe you want science fiction, maybe Warhammer 40,000. Then you write down the theme, like what's happening. Are they trying to destroy the ring, like in Lord of the Rings? Are they trying to fight a specific monster, like in Warhammer 40,000? So you play out the first scene and just add along, the surge count as the game goes on. So you just create scenes by asking questions, and scene by scene, that's pretty much step 3, 4, and 5 and 6 are about the final, final part of your adventure. Another thing I will note is this game goes really well with play-by-post games. Those games that you just play on the internet, on a forum somewhere. Yeah, this works well with that because sometimes your game master isn't always available, so you can use this instead. And next is, unlike most, you can, if another player is missing, maybe a key player is missing, you can just put him in a sidebar or something like that, so that his absence doesn't cause that much of a disruption for your game. So yeah, there's all that. So I think that's pretty much it for the basics of the CRGE. So yeah, anyway, if you enjoyed that, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications. And if you'd like to support me, again, my Patreon account can be found in the description below. Or if you just want to make a quick and small donation, there's a PayPal account there as well. So that's pretty much it for today. I'll see you guys in the next episode.